So, this generation has had a pretty good run. We've had some cracking titles over the last 7 years or so. But perhaps more interesting than the highlights of this gen's interactive entertainment is the dark nadir of games best left forgotten. Join me as we venture into the gloomiest depths to uncover the worst Xbox 360 games ever. Now, for the purpose of this video, we'll be talking about full-price, boxed releases only, and we're basing critical reception on the aggregate review scores of Metacritic. Kicking off our shameful selection, and with the dubious virtue of being the least worst of our selection, Shellshock 2, Blood Trails, scored an impressively low 30%, putting it at number 10 on our list. Unsurprising, given that it's a threadbare first-person shooter with last-gen graphics, clunky mechanics, and a rather comical sprint animation. The concept is an interesting twist on the already gruesome arena of the Vietnam War, an injection of shady medical ethics which could have been used to great effect, but simply fall flat through poor exposition and tired mechanics.
Dead meat can stand here. Look, there you dead. They get in here, I'll make sure I do all of us before they get us. Stay down. At least we're gonna die in a church!
Next up, at number 9, it's lacklustre off-road racer Score International Baja 1000, taking the dubious honour of being the worst racing game available for the Xbox, by virtue of its Metacritic score of just 29%. Despite its unimpressive graphics, the game doesn't seem much worse than any other run-of-the-mill racer, but after a couple of laps, the cracks start to show. Handling is comically bad, with your steering input taken as an idle suggestion rather than anything important to react upon in a responsive manner. There's also a crippling lack of tracks. You'll start to rue the repetition as the nondescript circuits drive you around the bend.
Caution ahead. Whoa, maybe not.
At number 8, Jumper, Griffin's story escapes the label of worst movie tie-in ever by a hair, with a less-than-enviable Metacritic score of 29. Punctuated by banal comic book-style cutscenes and presented as a subpar brawler, the repetitive action is differentiated only by the teleport mechanic, a defining feature of the film that does nothing but reduce the game into button-bashing tedium. Each of the 4 coloured face buttons corresponds to a different attack direction, so even basic movement is taken out of the equation as you mindlessly mash your way to victory. Later enemies prove marginally more challenging, but by this point you'll only wish for the ability to teleport a better game into your console. At number 7 on our list is Truth or Lies, scoring a paltry 28%. A microphone-driven party game that styles itself on a polygraph machine, a lie detector, in which you must answer a sequence of questions intended to provoke, embarrass, or reveal your inner secrets. Were it to function with any degree of accuracy, it would be naught more than a novelty, and not much of a game. But the fact that the soothsaying ability of the Xbox is limited, to say the least, rather spoils this game's already restricted potential. Upon uttering words into the microphone, the black box within whirs and chugs away for a moment or two, before proclaiming the speaker's veracity. But the thing is, it simply doesn't work. Should you avoid this game? True.
Brains? Have you ever been fooled by a transsexual? Moving on, nothing to see here.
At number 6, Rebellion's second entry to our list, Rogue Warrior, has a layer more polish than their other offering, but falls even further from grace, with a rating of just 28%, earning it the hotly contested title of Worst FPS this generation. The protagonist is Navy SEAL Richard Marcinko, and is portrayed as a reckless, foul-mouthed operative, with voice acting provided by none other than Mickey Rourke. Rourke provides an impressive performance, your character giving an X-rated play-by-play of the trite events that unfold. This narration sadly wasted on the North Koreans you slaughter by the dozen. If the controls weren't so clunky, the bombastic string of expletives that spew from the main character would have B-movie appeal. But with no substance to stand on, the humour is nothing more than adolescent emission.
Rock and roll, motherfuckers, rock and roll. Drop dead, motherfucker, you fucking amateurs. Bring the noise, bitch.
Next is the first of a string of Kinect games. DECA Sports Freedom is our 5th worst game, with average reviews of 26%, making the lukewarm Kinect Sports look like Game of the Year by comparison. While not every game for the Xbox motion control camera is necessarily bad, they do seem to have a solid representation at the bottom of the pile. While there's nothing fundamentally wrong with motion controls, least of all for a sports game, when basic control functions become a frustrating affair, any enjoyment quickly withers. There's a whole decathlon of sports to choose from, and almost certainly more on offer than you'll ever want to try. While the game might have sufficient variety, the loose controls will mar your virtual athletic career, as long as your endurance holds out. At number 4 is another Kinect title. Hulk Hogan's Main Event is a cartoon-esque wrestling game that attained a Metacritic score of just 26. It transposes the showmanship of professional wrestling onto Kinect's motion controls, in which you must hold poses before entering the ring, and subsequently mime to the theatrical acts within the squared circle. Fights are little more than a series of stunts, sequenced beatdowns, throws and pins, leading to chairs to the face, and interminable Irish whips. Its simplistic art style can be forgiven as a stylistic choice, but again, the loose controls detract from what little interactivity is on offer, and the repetitive moves might lead some to break kayfabe, if not the game disc.
Oh, he's breaking free! 1, 2, 3!
Number 3 is a painful revisit to an otherwise dead franchise, dredged from the seedier side of PC gaming of the late 1980s. Leisure Suit Larry Box Office Bust features the original Larry's nephew in a low-budget open-world sandbox romp that attracted scathing reviews across the board for a Metacritic score of 25%. The Leisure Suit Larry series has always had a reputation for appealing to the prurient with its suggestive themes of an adult nature, but seldom delivered anything but cheap laughs and a slip of titillation. Box Office Bust steers clear of the explicit, and in any case the participants are too ugly, both in grotesque appearance and detestable character, to hold any appeal whatsoever. Tack some awful gameplay and a poor excuse for a plot onto this ensemble, and you have a truly execrable excuse for entertainment.
You? Me? Who are you and why are you holding my personal belongings? Look, I'm Larry. I work here now. I like porn. Larry, babe, let me explain something. I'm what you would call a power broker in this town, okay? My cock ring costs more than your car. Do you have a car?
I don't have a car.
You don't have a car. Why are you still in my office?
I guess I'll be going.
From the puerile to the puerile, with our second worst rated title, and lowest scoring movie tie-in this generation. To be fair, I doubt the expectations for Hannah Montana the movie were very high, but nonetheless it attained a less than lofty 25%. For fans of the pop star, the major criticism is the short length of the game, although what little content there is can only be described as mediocre at best. It's an odd fusion of rhythm game and farming simulator, amongst a few other minigames. To its credit, the game is varied, although there is a worrying emphasis on clothes shopping. Still, if you can stomach the saccharine presentation and can abide the rampant consumerism, the Hannah Montana game is probably one of the more playable titles on this list.
Alright, Miley, time's a-wastin'. You missed rehearsal, and in just a few minutes we'll have an arena full of fans waiting to see Hannah Montana, and we gotta get through a few things.
Now, the moment you've been waiting for. Our final entry, collectively deemed the worst ever game made for the Xbox 360, is Self-Defense Training Camp. This Connect title comfortably at the bottom of the pile, with average review scores of just 21%. It is perhaps ironic that the motion controls here are the keenest of all three Connect titles. Surprisingly responsive and with a good degree of tolerance in the moves. Presentation is pretty slick too. The menus are clean and relatively easy to navigate, and while the graphics aren't spectacular, they are far from ugly. This game's major failing is probably in the overwhelming lack of any game-like features. There's no real challenge and no variety whatsoever. In essence, it amounts to little more than a genital kicking simulator. As you perfect the so-called moves, time and time again, you'll find yourself interacting with your assailant's genital triangle. Of course, simultaneously shouting, "That's my purse, I don't know you," is entirely optional. While going for the groin is no doubt effective in a self-defense scenario, one has to question whether the lethargic pace of this training is true to a real-life assault scenario. I have my sincere doubts as to the practical benefit of these routines. With no real usefulness, motion controls, repetitive gameplay with little challenge, and otherwise being devoid of any merit whatsoever, it is perhaps small wonder that this title scored so poorly.
Very good. Now the kick to the groin. Great. Straight into a groin kick. Kick his groin. Stretch out your leg and kick with the top of your foot. Very nice. Now hit the groin. Kick his groin. Stretch out your leg and kick with your toes.
And thus concludes our compendium of the 10 worst-rated full-price titles available for the Xbox 360. It is safe to say that none of these games are stellar, although perhaps not all deserve a place in the fiery depths of gaming perdition. All 10 have their merits, even if it extends only to easy achievements, or a reminder to be grateful for the better games we've had the fortune to play. And spare a thought for the people behind these games. Brave souls who struggle against impossible deadlines and deliver despite knowing their efforts might not contribute to anything resembling Game of the Year. These critical missteps serve as beacons for those who follow, marking bad design decisions and poor gameplay, so that others might learn from their mistakes, and that we might reap the rewards of better games. Well, that was fun. We should do this again sometime. Thanks for watching, and until next time, farewell.